1012, and it gives me 1,250 feet. Checks it.
Announced the arrival of the flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
Explosion. And welcome everybody to this Monday, June 13th, 2016 edition of T&Z Talk. I am Tony Trupiano, the T in T&Z. Joining me now is Richard Zombeck. He would, of course, be the Z. And, man, Z, there's obviously the conversation today between us is going to be driven by the horrific news that the entire country woke up to yesterday morning, that there was a mass shooting in Orlando, Florida at a gay nightclub titled Pulse. And apparently the number has changed from 50 to 49 dead and 53 injured. And I haven't really gotten an explanation as to why that number has gone down by one, but I guess I'll take it. With that said, it's great to be with you this morning. I'm not going to go through the frivolity of how was your weekend, blah, 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 blah. This is serious stuff we're facing.
Well, I'm having, I have a hard time with this all the time because it's what we know, what we've seen, is going to happen. It's going to be, one side's going to be going, we gotta control the guns, and the other side is going, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And the fact of the matter is I'm sorry, but there was an armed, trained, off-duty police officer who was working that nightclub, moonlighting, and really, apparently couldn't get off a shot because he would have shot innocent bystanders. And they're going to have the autopsies done and everything like that to see exactly how many were killed by the gunman and how many were killed by the cops that stormed the club to stop the gunman who was shooting people with an AR-15, which seems to be the gun of choice of all these lunatics. So I'm tired. I am effing tired of the argument of no, what we need is more guns. And I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of it to the point where it's just like, I look at this argument and I don't even want to engage anymore because I know that in 2 days we're going to go back to, oh, well, yeah, here we go. Donald Trump is saying something stupid again.
Well, he's already done that. Well, first of all, let me just say, Z, my thoughts and prayers are with you during this time of great strife for you personally. Because thoughts and prayers solve all problems, don't they?
That's right. They absolutely do. Our thoughts and prayers. I'm trying to find something that I tweeted yesterday that surprisingly or unsurprisingly actually did really well on Twitter and social media. And so here it is, GOP, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims of Orlando, even though we've demonized you for years and passed laws to dehumanize you. Because not one, I don't even know what to call them anymore, GOP, Republican, conservative, not one person from the right that commented on this mentioned that this was an attack against the LGBT community.
Well, so let me just kind of begin with a question to you and to people that are listening to this podcast. As we sit and talk about divisiveness, and we talk about terror, we talk about hatred, we talk about homophobia, we, of course, have been inundated with all kinds of experts. Even when I was listening to NPR yesterday to and from a Democratic Party fundraiser that I was the MC of, nothing but speculation and opinion. And at the end of the day, there are a couple conversations that we need to have. But let's start with the question. can this stuff be stopped? Can this kind of terror, hatred, and I don't even know that we need to define it because it is what it is, right? Can it be stopped?
Can it be stopped?
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, one of the arguments that some idiot, the usual argument from idiots was, oh, yeah, criminals obey laws, right? Because laws are going to stop. And my response was, they certainly don't turn down invitations, I mean, it's like this guy was on the terrorist watch list. He was able to get a gun. It's like, hey, no. We don't want to make it harder for you to get a gun. I mean, we can't discriminate against terrorists, but we can discriminate against women, blacks, Mexicans, Muslims, gays, transgender. That kind of discrimination is fine. But, we cannot discriminate against people and, impede their quote unquote Second Amendment rights.
It's beyond all of that. It's the one part of the conversation that has not been getting focus. And for those that weren't aware or aren't aware, this weekend was Pride Weekend all over the country. In every major city, and I'm sure in some not so major cities, there were gay pride events, there were festivals, there were rallies, there were parades. And as I know you're aware, in Santa Monica, California, police had pulled over a young man, or had captured a young man that they had gotten calls on that was a prowler. He was prowling, whatever that means. When they, of course, searched his car, they found a cache of guns, some chemical weapons potentially that could have been used for an IED, an improvised explosive device for those that don't know what that is. And there's supposedly no connection between this young man, his last name was Howell, I forget his first name, and Omar Mateen. And I'm sure that there is no connection, except for one, hatred for the LGBTQ community. And well, you and I are both huge advocates and activists for that community, so it makes it that much harder. And I don't mind telling you that what happened yesterday, in a way, immediately reminded me of the Boston Marathon. But I can't tell you why, Z, but I just felt a connection there for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, probably the random, horror. That thousands of people were affected by this. The thing that happened in L.A., that kid that they pulled over, what was the deal with him? Was he a radicalized Muslim too, or just a hater?
Just a hater.
Oh yeah. Well, we're not seeing a lot about him, are we? Nice little Christian kid decides that he hates gays and is going to blow up the gay pride parade.
Well, truly, as devastating as this is, and you just said something that I don't want to gloss over. Thousands of people are affected by what happened yesterday. Now, we can say everybody in this country and in the world, because there's been an international outcry, is affected. But you think about the pebble in the pond theory. For the 103 or 102 people that were either killed or wounded in this egregious attack yesterday, all of the lives that are affected by that, all of the families, children, moms, dads, cousins, friends, aunts, uncles, co-workers, and the list goes on and on and on. The thousands of people that are personally attached to this isn't just those that are victims. It's everybody that that was touched by that life. Think about the gravity of that. Yeah,
I know. I mean, I know. I can't even be. There was an article yesterday that went up that, of course there's going to be. And it was an article about what some of these a-holes are saying on Facebook and on Twitter about the nature of the attack and the group of people that were targeted by this attack. And here's the thing, Tony, I'm just going to let people's imagination. I put it up on Twitter. I put it up on Facebook. Basically, it's like, who cares? They were gay. And I'm reading some of these comments, and I really was, I was queasy. It affected me on a level of, just one of those things. It's like, how is that even possible? How is it possible in our society that people can react in a hateful way about people getting murdered, slaughtered? It's like saying, who cares? Sandy Hook. They were just little kids. They're useless anyway. I mean, really just completely dehumanizing and berating an entire segment of our population.
Well, dehumanizing is an unfortunate, accurate word. Let's begin our audio menagerie today with President, just the very beginning of President Obama's remarks in response to the shootings in Orlando yesterday. So if you wouldn't mind shooting that, and we'll talk some more.
Today, as Americans, we grieve the brutal murder, a horrific massacre of dozens of innocent people. We pray for their families who are grasping for answers with broken hearts. We stand with the people of Orlando who have endured a terrible attack on their city. Although it's still early in the investigation, we know enough to say that this was an act of terror and an act of hate. And as Americans, we are united in grief, in outrage, and in resolve to defend our people. I just finished a meeting with FBI Director Comey and my Homeland Security and National Security advisors. The FBI is on the scene and leading the investigation in partnership with local law enforcement. I've directed that the full resources of the federal government be made available for this investigation. We are still learning all the facts. This is an open investigation. We've reached no definitive judgment on the precise motivations of the killer. The FBI is appropriately investigating this as an act of terrorism, and I've directed that we must spare no effort to determine what, if any, inspiration or association this killer may have had with terrorist groups. What is clear is that he was a person filled with hatred. Over the coming days, we will uncover why and how this happened, and we will go wherever the facts lead us. This morning I spoke with my good friend Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer, and I conveyed to him the deepest condolences of the American people. This could have been any one of our communities. So I told Mayor Dyer that whatever help he and the people of Orlando need, they are going to get it. As a country, we will be there for the people of Orlando today, tomorrow, and for all the days to come.
Well, and at that point, he went on to talk about the gun culture without being overly dramatic about it. No, I mean, the president really is, unfortunately, way too practiced in this particular art form, as I think that it's been on average of every other month of his term, he's had to address some kind of mass shooting in the nation. I think it's important that we underscore that this is outside of 9/11, the worst massacre of Americans in the history of this country. I think that it's incumbent upon us to remember that in spite of the radicalization, the ISIS connection, or the lack thereof, whatever it happens to be, that ultimately this is about hate, whether it's hate for the LGBT community, hate for the American people, but it is about love of destruction. As you know, his ex-wife claims that he is mentally ill. How can you not be? I don't think you can murder and injure over 100 people and not be mentally ill. Nobody of sound mind would do that. I'm thinking that number 49 actually comes from the fact that he was killed as well. That's Omar Mateen, and maybe they're not counting him in the victims.
Could be.
And I think that would be appropriate.
That's pretty good thinking there, Tony.
Why, thank you. So yesterday morning, I was up early, as I'm just not a late sleeper, and it was the first thing I saw at 4:30 in the morning. And so I wrote a column, and I titled it, "A Pandora's Box Has Been Opened Wider This Year." And I don't blame Donald Trump for what happened yesterday, but I do place some blame on the rhetoric that he uses and how hate has become, and anger, far more acceptable since his emergence as a political figure. I don't think that's politicizing what's going on. I think it's just an accurate observation. But if you think I was politicizing in that comment, feel free to tell me that.
Well, here's the thing, Tony. I mean, do you think do you think saying Muslims are the cause of all our problems may cause people to go nuts and maybe dislike and even hate Muslims? Do you think saying Mexicans are our problem may cause people to attack Mexicans? Do you think saying LGBT and are a cause of our problems and are, filthy, unhuman people that don't deserve to live? Do you think that coming from people that are supposed to be leading our country is going to have any effect on some of the lunatics in our population? I don't know. Yeah. Do you think it's irresponsible? Can they keep talking like this? Should they be allowed to keep talking like this? I mean, really, this is what's happening. It's not just, people already hated the Muslims. It's like you have actual politicians who are supposed to be calming and soothing and guiding us that are saying, that's your problem right there.
Well, before we get into Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's response to what happened yesterday, maybe it would be a good idea to listen to what Bernie Sanders had to tell Chuck Todd on Meet the Press yesterday. Let's just leave it there and play that audio.
Me from Vermont. Senator, welcome back to Meet the Press.
My pleasure.
Before I get into political questions, obviously what's unfolding in Orlando is on top of mind for many viewers. We don't know the motivation. We just know there's a lot of dead people right now, a lot of injured people. Whether it's gun related, terrorism related, hate crime related, it's a massive shooting. Your reaction?
It's horrific. It's unthinkable, and our just hopes go out to all those who were shot that they can recover. And I got to tell you, over 25 years ago, I believed that in this country we should not be selling automatic weapons which are designed to kill people. And we have got to do everything that we can on top of that to make sure that guns do not fall into the hands of people who should not have them, criminals or people who are mentally ill. So that struggle continues.
You think we can ever have a conversation where we have the terrorism conversation and the gun conversation where everybody can sit down and have this without trying to politicize one version of events over the other?
I do, Chuck, because I think that there is a very broad consensus in this country, not 100% of the people. Overwhelming majority of gun owners and non-gun owners understand that we have got to do everything that we can to prevent guns from falling into the hands of people who should not have that. And that means expanding the instant background check. It means doing away with the gun show loophole. It means addressing the straw man provision. I think there is a wide consensus to move forward in that direction.
So what was interesting over the weekend about that is some of the media accused Chuck Todd of accusing Bernie Sanders of politicizing this.
How?
Yeah, and I didn't get that. It seemed like an unnecessary attack on Chuck Todd.
Especially since it's not true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was having a conversation. He asked a question. I didn't see him be accusatory towards Bernie Sanders as far as, that Bernie was politicizing this.
Yeah, well, speaking of politicizing, and of course that's a ridiculous assertion to begin with. Let's take a look at the way both Hillary, the presumptive nominees in both parties, Hillary Clinton is the Democratic presumptive nominee and Donald Trump is the Republican. Hillary Clinton was very statesmanlike. Certainly, I would not suggest that this is even a bad thing, that she probably coordinated her response with the White House to make sure that her and the president were on the same page, which is appropriate, in my opinion. Or if they even needed to do that. I think Secretary Clinton has a pretty good grasp on how the president was going to respond to that. And she was very statesmanlike. Certainly, and I listened to her on the Morning Joe show this morning, had some important things to say, dealt directly with the issue in a fashion that did not make me cringe. Then there's Donald Trump, who decided that really the answer here is to get tough, and he wanted to acknowledge all of the people that had thanked him for being right on his opinion on terror. Not that he wanted the thanks, but he wanted to acknowledge those, all of those that reached out to him. Of course, we don't know how many that was, where they came from, or who they are, but he did get a lot of thank yous for being right. But his response was, let's just go and bomb the hell out of the Middle East and end this once and for all. Oh, and by the way, the President of the United States should resign for refusing to say radical,
radical Islamic terrorists.
Right. And so he needs to resign over that because he doesn't agree, Trump doesn't agree with the semantics. Again, who's politicizing?
Well, and here's the thing, right? So I'm looking at something right now that is basically saying the FBI and the parents of the Orlando shooter say he's not a terrorist, just an American homophobe. He was born here.
That makes us feel better.
He was born here. He was. So I mean, to your point, right? Donald Trump is ginning up his minions that this is Islamic terrorism and blaming the president for not using the term radical Islamic terrorists when the president is being cautious in not ginning things up until we have all the facts. And in fact, we have the FBI and the parents of the guy that did this saying, look, he wasn't radicalized religiously. He wasn't even religious. He was a homophobe. This was a hate crime.
Well, so what do we make of all of the information that we're getting about his 3 interviews with the FBI over his comments to a coworker about terrorist attacks on the homeland? Even his father has been accused of being anti-American. Apparently, he hosts a foreign language television talk show where he has been has spoken both glowingly about the United States, but at different points has either spoken glowingly about Afghanistan or very negatively about them. And the idea that seeing 2 men kiss can enrage you to the point where you go out and buy 2 weapons, one of them which is known and has been used in other mass shootings in this country and around the globe. Should we separate that? Is it all part of this young man's makeup. I mean, 29 years old, was abusive to his wife, who had to literally be rescued from him, left her belongings behind for fear that she would be caught there. Is this, a study of, again, just a conglomeration, a compilation of just an incredibly dysfunctional life and perhaps bad parenting? Is it really radicalization of an individual in this country? I mean, Z, there are a ton of questions here, but at the end of the day, it's hate, and he did something that is beyond egregious, that literally, and I would hope nobody listening to this podcast could even fathom doing.
Yeah, well, and you said guns that have, the same gun that was used. This particular gun was also used in other crimes.
Yeah. So that's that. All right. Well,
not just this particular model, right? I mean, this particular gun.
Right.
Look. I don't really care what people think the Second Amendment means. This gun isn't used for hunting. It's used for two. Actually, let me read a quote by Stephen King on semi-automatics. He says semi-automatics have only two purposes. One is so owners can take them to the shooting range once in a while, yell yeehaw, and get all horny at the rapid fire and the burning vapor spurting from the end of the barrel. Their only other use, is to kill people.
Fair enough. One of the many reasons I love Stephen King. I was going to make a point and it escaped me. So let's. No, it's all right. This morning I did my show on the USA Radio Network with Angie Austin. Now, Angie is a conservative, and as she expressed this morning on the show, they are a gun-owning family. But she can't fathom why somebody should be able to buy an AR-15 in this society. There's nothing wrong with having a handgun if you want to protect yourself. There's nothing wrong with having a piece of hunting guns, whatever that might be that's appropriate for you. But really, a semi-automatic weapon that has an easily exchangeable cartridge when you run out of bullets, etc., etc. Yeah, yes, Ted Nugent, I'm sure that you would have some kind of justification for that. All right, let's go back to the audio board and turn to Tucker Carlson, who, of course, I will always know as the Dick, according to Jon Stewart. But, not everybody, and of course it should come as no surprise that Tucker Carlson works for the Fox News Network, had the following to say about what happened in Orlando. And I wish this were a joke. I wish this were some kind of Saturday Night Live skit, but it's not.
Number one, people must be aware this is a jihadi trade. Secondly, what does it mean for the general public? Thank you. Well, this is why I wrote Defeating Jihad, my new book. Every American, especially after San Bernardino, but even now today, if it turns out that this is a jihadi attack, must understand you are on the front line of this war. It's not just our brave men and women in the Middle East wearing a uniform fighting for the Republic. It is everybody, whether you carry a badge or a gun or don't. It doesn't matter. You must be alert. You must be aware of your surroundings. And most important of all, you must report suspicious activities. If that had happened in San Bernardino, those 14 people may still be alive today. So all Americans have a role to play. You must be aware you are on the front line. Be alert and report anything that you see which is suspicious.
But isn't the message, and we saw this in San Bernardino, Anna just reminded us from a neighbor of the couple responsible for that attack, who was afraid to report weird behavior because she didn't want to be called an Islamophobe. Doesn't the politicization of all of this, the relentless lying administration about the Islamic terror threat we face, make it harder for people to want to step forward and say what they see?
Absolutely, Tucker. It's horrific. It's horrific. I spent 8 hours with a Midwest police force, 250 officers, teaching them about jihad, helping them understand Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. After 8 hours of talking to them, a young woman walks up, from the administration, from the Department of Homeland Security, and says, "Look, Dr. Walker, that's all really very interesting, but I disagree with all of it because the primary threat to Americans is white supremacists."
Which is true. I mean,
yeah.
I don't understand why he. I mean, it's almost like saying the entire Obama administration is inept, right? And me, this guy that wrote this book that nobody knows anything about and nobody really knows me, I just come on as an expert onto Fox News, like that guy that said he had been in the CIA for 30 years, and it turns out after 10 years of being on Fox News that he was never, in fact, in the CIA or even part of it or had even been in the building. And this guy, they're trotting out as some kind of expert on terrorism, and and think that he's got the ability to debunk trained military operatives that have been studying this for the better part of their lives.
Well, and it's interesting because as we learn more and as this gets broken down, white supremacy, by the way, is a much greater risk to society than radicalized Muslims. With that said, and I want to make the point about ISIS not claiming any kind of involvement in what happened in Orlando, but celebrating this young man who did this supposedly in the name of ISIS. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday at the event that I was at, and years ago, I read this amazing article about gangs and why gangs flourish. And it's actually not a stretch of the imagination to figure this out. Many people in gangs don't have families, don't have a nuclear family, don't have mom and dad and have dinner together during the week and go to school and somebody that's checking their homework, etc. Those that are in gangs generally live in high poverty areas where a sense of connectedness or what they have in common is the fact that they are poor. So they form these de facto families. And as a result of that, and even into adulthood and beyond, they stay connected to them by large because it's what they know. Now, that made complete sense to me, right? Z, I don't think that's a stretch of the imagination by any sense, is it?
No.
Okay. If we take that philosophy and transfer it over to an Omar Mateen or any other radicalized American, does the same criteria apply? And the answer is a definitive no. I don't know enough about Omar Mateen to know, but I do know that the shooters in the San Bernardino massacre did not come from unstable homes, did not come from poverty. And in fact, we know that Omar Mateen doesn't come from poverty. His father's a very successful, or I should say was a very successful insurance salesman, and I would imagine he's going to have a tough time finding new clients after this. And maybe that's fair, maybe it's not. I don't know. But this goes back to the question I asked earlier. Can this be stopped? And I don't know that we can ever stop an individual from committing an atrocious crime like this if they get it in their head that it's what needs to be done in the name of fill in the blank. Maybe it's in the name of hatred towards blacks or the LGBTQ community or Mexicans or whatever, or whoever it might be. But that doesn't mean that we can't do things, as you are more than suggesting, with regard to gun control, that we can't put into place laws or limit the availability of certain weapons. If this AR-15 were not available, I'm not saying you couldn't get your hands on one, because you could, but if they weren't readily available, this doesn't happen with a hunting knife and 2 handguns. It just doesn't.
Yeah, or even a rifle.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's absolutely no reason that anyone in this country should be able to shoot 200 rounds per minute and not have to reload before having killed and injured nearly 100 people. There's no reason. I mean,
No.
if that's what you need to hunt elk or deer, then you need to pick up knitting or something, because apparently you suck at hunting.
Yeah. And in fact, the goal of hunting is not to actually kill it and then butcher it while you're shooting it. And anybody that's ever seen an AR-15 at play would understand what I'm saying. See, I just got this news alert from the Hill. And I just want to read it as it is. Presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump on Monday cast doubt on President Obama's commitment to fighting radical Islamic terrorism, saying there's something going on. Let me quote Donald Trump. We're led by a man that either is not tough, not smart, or he's got something else in mind. And that something else in mind, you know, people can believe it. People cannot believe that President Obama is acting the way he acts and can't even mention the words radical Islamic terrorism. There's something going on. It's inconceivable. There's something going on. He doesn't get it, or he gets it better than anybody understands. It's one or the other, and either one is unacceptable. He goes on to say there are a lot of people who think maybe he doesn't want to get it. A lot of people think maybe he doesn't want to know about it. I happen to think that he just doesn't know what he's doing, but there are many people that think maybe he doesn't want to get it. He doesn't want to see what's really happening. What message does that send? Did I stump you? Did I lose you?
I'm sorry, I had my mic off. It's funny that you brought up that article, because I was looking at nearly the identical article and was going to bring it up after you had finished talking from Think Progress, where they have the exact same interview on there. It was with one of the idiots from the Fox and Friends. I forget his name. He's not Ducey. He's the other moron. But basically leading Trump, and Trump basically insinuating that Obama is letting this happen on purpose because he himself is a Muslim.
Okay.
That's where we're at. And then saying he's not tough, he's not smart, and therefore he's not smart, right? The president that we have is a constitutional lawyer who taught constitutional law, is just not smart, and therefore, but you know, Donald Trump went to the Wharton School of Business, and he's way smarter with his big, giant, wonderful, beautiful brain of his, that the only advisor he really needs is himself, because he's got such a wonderful brain. And insinuating that Obama's kind of letting this happen because, you know, this is what he wants to do.
Yeah, or something, you know, because those are very articulate words, or something. Say what it is you want to say. It's not like you can offend us any more than you already have at Real Donald Asshat. And I'm so fed up with this guy. So fed up with this guy. Anyway, let's turn to our old trusted friend Tom Brokaw, who also spoke about the tragedy in Orlando. And I have to tell you that I'm still comforted by people like Tom Brokaw. I was watching some YouTube video of Walter Cronkite last week, and I'll tell you why off air. And I got to tell you that I still find great comfort in these guys. I don't know that we have statesmen like that deliver news to us any longer. Anyway, with that said, this is Tom Brokaw.
Assessment, yes.
All right. Obviously, I have the panel with me now: Tom Brokaw, Hugh Hewitt, Amy Walter, Joy Reid. Tom, we don't know. Hate crime, terrorism. There's a number of directions this is going to go, and we know political reaction will be based on what the FBI tells us. Should it matter? No. It's a terrorizing situation, no matter what.
It shouldn't matter whether, if it turns out to be connected to some kind of an international group, all the politicians will jump all over that and say, we've got to do something about them. But let's say it's a domestic shooting. We've got to do something about that. I'm a gun owner. I've been saying this for months now. It's time for people to come together and say, enough. If he had an assault weapon, if it was an AR-14, Sam McChrystal has said not to be in civilian hands. It's designed to do one thing, to kill people. And we don't have any dialogue going on in America about all of these mass shootings that have occurred since San Bernardino. And they've been going on around the country, 3 or more killed at a time. This absolutely belongs in the political debate, and it ought to be a place where both parties can talk about it in a rational fashion to dial down. You got a problem? Get a gun. That's what goes on now. It's got to come to an end. It's a terrible commentary.
Your initial thoughts and reaction?
Well, the unmistakable mutterings of violence have been coursing through the world for years, and this looks like the Paris concert hall attack where a number of people are trapped. And I just finished Daniel Silva's new novel, The Black Widow, which is about domestic terrorism being imported by ISIS. And it's chilling. It's very chilling. We focus on the San Jose violence. We focus on the violence in Chicago, San Bernardino. But ISIS wants to do this here. They want to do it here a lot. And so I found Pete's reporting remarkable that they're on this so fast. If he had electronic devices, they will figure out what the network is. But it's very chilling. And every dead person is a tragic murder. But if ISIS gets their people here or inspires, it will be a long series of years.
The arming of this, too, right? This is what just gets everybody, and this is why you wonder we can't have the holistic conversation.
No.
Right? We don't, how do we prevent terrorists from arming themselves so well?
I just can't stop thinking about the mother that you
mom.
showed.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
yes.
As a parent myself. And I think that this is where a lot of people, I sit, and you do too, you talk to a lot of voters, I sit with a lot of women voters especially, and they've been saying this really for the last 3 or 4 years. They do not make a distinction between domestic terrorism and international terrorism. They are just as scared to send their kids on the school bus as they are this idea that ISIS is infiltrating us. And so I think it's getting to the heart of what is it that Americans are looking for, the sense of safety and security that right now nobody can provide to them.
Well, let me start by saying, and I'll just make this real quick, ISIS is not infiltrating us. Can we be clear on that?
Yeah, I don't know where this idea comes from, but...
ISIS is not infiltrating.
We're clear on that.
All right. And so, this narrative that we are all of a sudden being inundated by radicalized Islamic terrorists in this country is just ridiculous. Now, I have to tell you that they knew the name of the shooter from the very beginning because he had actually called 911 and identified himself. Now, I didn't know that at 4:30 in the morning. All I knew is that they had a name, and his name was Omar Mateen. And the first thing I did was exhale with a heavy sigh and said, here we go again. I wanted his name to be Bob Jones.
Yeah.
Or Frank Smith. But it wasn't. And a large percentage of the people at the event that I was the MC for yesterday were Muslim. And, all right, I'm going to tell this story. There was a very well-known pollster there, and he was there to troll for clients. And he was the only one there, so if anybody that was there is listening to this, they'll immediately know who I'm talking about. But he and I had a very brief conversation. One of the Muslims that was there, a very nice man, is running for the State Board of Education. Just a great guy. I've known him a long time. And I said to this pollster, well, Ishmael's going to have a really difficult time. He goes, oh, yeah, man, I wouldn't want to be a Muslim. That's not what I was talking about. He got into the race only 6 weeks ago. There are only 2 open seats, about 7 people running. And I had kind of pre-qualified my statement saying that, but he goes, oh, yeah, he's a Muslim.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Listen, I want to read something because I just came across it, and
sure.
There are 2 Connecticut senators, Chris Murphy and Richard Blumenthal, who represent the community of Newtown. Obviously, that was the 20 children and 6 adults killed at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012. They're both vocal gun control advocates. And this is what Chris Murphy said, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. Quote, this phenomenon of near constant mass shootings happens only in America, nowhere else. Congress has become complicit in these murders by its total, unconscionable, deafening silence. This doesn't have to happen, but this epidemic will continue without end if Congress continues to sit on its hands and do nothing again. And, you know, I am heartened hearing that from senators. I would like to hear it from the right, from the Republicans, who have been completely co-opted by the gun lobby, who have apparently, or who have shown no apparent value for human life if it affects their campaign funds, coffers, and personal bank accounts.
Well, you know, Willie Geist said something at the end of Morning Joe's show today that really caught my attention. Now, towards the end of the show, I'm really focused on getting ready to do our podcast. And then you and I talk right after Morning Joe's over. It just so happened that's coincidental, but that's when we talk. So I've got it on, but I'm really not paying attention. But he said something that made me stop dead in my tracks. He said, what makes you think that 20 innocent first graders can be murdered and nothing happens? That 50 people are killed in the LGBT community and something will happen? Think again.
Yeah.
No, sadly right, Z.
I saw that too, and you know, I actually got a little choked up. You know, it was that feeling of he's absolutely right, and finally, you know, it's about time someone said that about what's going on in this country, and the fact that. I think what disgusts me the most, Tony, is after these things happen, the level of quote-unquote pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun people that come out thinking that they're going to somehow overtake the conversation and pad it in a way, hey, let's not forget, this isn't about guns. You know? It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure a gun was used to mow down 50 people over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, listen, we had mentioned Omar Mateen's father earlier. You actually grabbed some audio that I would like to play. And before we do that, he recently, and within the last hour, was quoting as saying, only God will punish gays. So maybe parenting did have something to do with it. But let's play this piece of audio.
Meantime, this just in, and this is important, from the father of the shooter. NBC News has now spoken to Mir Siddiqui, the father of the shooter who we know to be now Omar Mateen, born in 1986 in New York. Here's what his father said when reached by phone by NBC News. Quote, we are saying we're apologizing for the whole incident. We weren't aware of any action he is taking. We're in shock like the whole country. This had nothing to do with religion, said his father. He goes on to say he claims that his son got very angry when he saw two men kissing in downtown Miami a couple of months ago, and says he thinks that may have caused this. Why is that important? Because Pulse is a popular gay nightclub in Orlando, full, police say, with about 320 people when the shooting began at 2 o'clock in the morning. Again, the father saying to NBC News his son got angry when he saw two men kissing in Miami a couple of months ago. He believes there may be some motive there. Obviously, law enforcement officials looking more deeply into that, but that is from Omar Mateen's father, Mir Sadiqeh.
But it's still ISIS.
Yeah, and again, going to his latest comment that only God punishes gays. So obviously, there is a culture in that household. There is a teaching in that household that homosexuality is wrong. Can we kind of make that leap?
Sure.
All right. So we do that, and then it makes a little more sense. One of the things
but can we also say that the attitude could also be that killing is wrong?
Not unless keeping in mind where they come from. And again, that culture, immigrating, not coming here illegally, immigrating from Afghanistan, knowing nothing but death, decay, and that entire culture, torture, dictatorship, tyranny, basically what Donald Trump espouses, and having that as your makeup. Now, even if you come to this country and you assimilate, but that is what you know as an adult, I don't know that you completely shed that. I don't know that bitterness ever completely leaves you. Think of, and I'm just asking the audience, Z, and you as well, me as well, to think of those things in our past that really, kind of stuck a shiv in our back. And although we've moved on from it and we don't really feel the pain of it anymore, we also don't forget that there was pain, right? One of the blessings of pain is it doesn't stay forever. But that doesn't mean that we completely eliminate it mentally or emotionally. And so I'm suggesting that, maybe there wasn't, I didn't live in the house and don't know the family, but maybe there wasn't teachings of peace and prosperity and living in a new land and all the opportunities that presents and leaving the scars of the old world behind us. Now, we know that Omar Mateen was born in this country. We know that he is an American citizen. And we know that he doesn't know the horrors of war and tyranny and dictatorship, etc. Unless, of course, it was taught to him.
And I would have to agree.
So we'll leave it there. Well, you and I both are huge fans of Joy Reid. She also was on with Chuck Todd yesterday, and this is what their exchange sounds like.
Joy, that's the overwhelming feeling I have, is that there is this just feeling of insecurity. We lack control on the terrorism issue. We seem to lack control and moral on the gun issue. We seem to lack cultural norms, too. I mean, there's just a part of this that's just like, it feels like a new normal, and it's an uncomfortable normal.
Yeah. It's a very uncomfortable normal, because while Hugh says it looks like, San Bernardino looks like Paris, it also looks like Charleston. Right, so we've had mass casualty shootings that were purely.
By the way, dead people are dead people.
Exactly,
I hate to say, it all looks bad.
It also looks like Newtown, right? So we have mass casualty shootings that are affecting children, teachers, people in church, whether it's a hate crime or whether it's related to something related to international terrorism. We're not getting to the core issue, which is how easy it is to get a gun. I mean, Florida happens to have the largest gun-owning population in the country and some of the most lax laws as to how you can get your hands on even an assault rifle. so that if you mean to do harm, you know, we're talking about a state with 1.4 million, nearly 1.4 million law-abiding, obviously, gun owners, but we're not talking about that issue. Right now, the only debate that's taking place in the state of Florida is the Supreme Court weighing whether to allow complete open carry so that people can actually visibly show firearms on the streets of Florida. So we're having a debate that is so disconnected from the real fears that Amy talked about, the fears of people like me who are afraid to have their kids out in the world, not just because of criminals, but also because of maybe a deranged person.
Regular people.
I think that was it, Tony.
Yeah, well said, Joy. Well said indeed. Listen, we are just about out of time. My 20 seconds, and then you can take as much as you want. But certainly the hangover of this is sadly predictable. That there will be outrage, a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, a lot of nothing. It will be politicized. Both Hillary Clinton today at 12:30 Eastern Time and Donald Trump at 2:30 Eastern Time will be giving major addresses on foreign policy and remarks on what happened in Orlando. I can promise you they will be two very different speeches that ask and offer two very different views of what is happening in this country and continues to happen in this country. I caution this listening audience to start thinking for itself. And I'll leave with the words that I used at the end of my column yesterday. Something that we've all heard a lot. You may not believe it. You may not be religious. You may not be spiritual. But there are some guiding words in the Bible that actually are appropriate. Z, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yep, good one. So listen, I think that's it for us today. Well, let me just say this is my prediction, and I don't like my prediction, is pretty much along the lines of what you just said. We're going to see all kinds of outrage on social media. We're going to see outrage on how the GOP is reacting to this. We're going to see guns don't kill people, people kill people from the NRA. And in 4 or 5 days, we're going to go on with our lives, and nothing's going to get done. And this is going to continue to happen, just like it always does. And we'll have another shooting in, a couple months or whatever. And we'll go through this whole thing again another time in the same way with the exact same script. So listen, if you'd like to leave us a comment, if you'd like to contact us, you can also call in. There's a number you can leave us a voicemail that we will play on the air. You can also find out how to support us and friend us and share us on social media and help us get the word out. You can go to tandztalk.com. That's tandztalk.com. Tony?
All right. Z, thank you again for another great hour of podcasting genius. More on your end than on mine. In the meantime, we want to thank the audience. For Richard Zombek, I am Tony Trupiano, and as always, we ask that you be well.
Oh yeah, can you feel it? Just over the credits, just riffing now. Words and chords. Not the poetry and the real thing, but not bad for an ad-lib. Not good, but... It's not long enough, so just do a little bit more, and that's nearly done. That's the final credit there. That's the end.